Hey guys, my name is Angela Haynes, and I am so excited to present Reclaiming Your Why to promote collaborative relationships in the classroom. I really want this session to be informative and interactive. So if you have any questions or comments, please just drop them in the chat. And when we have a chance to break for Q&A, we will make sure that your questions are answered. If you ever have any questions or you just want to reach out and brainstorm or anything, here is how you can reach me. Email is going to probably be the best way, but if you want to follow some of the cool things that we're doing as the Teacher of the Year team, then you can follow me on Twitter. So here's our agenda for tonight. We are going to talk about reclaiming your why. So how do we define our why? And then we're going to talk about some digital tools that will help us build community and strengthen the relationships with our students. So this summer, I was very fortunate to spend a week in Ocracoke at NCAT. And if you haven't had a chance to go, I really would like you to consider it. It is such a transformative experience. I found that it's so special that Jean Powell, who is a former North Carolina Teacher of the Year, she had this dream of NCAT, right? Which would be this place where teachers could go for professional development away from their daily distractions. And she thought that if we had this governor's school for students, right, we should have something similar for teachers. And her dream finally became a reality. And now we have two NCAT campuses for teachers. So from the mountains to the coast. And it's really this amazing experience where you will go and you will be re-energized and empowered. And the top picture that you see here is that Ocracoke facility. And it used to be a Coast Guard facility, and it was transformed by use of educators for NCAT. And I can tell you, I was completely pushed out of my comfort zone with multiple activities. The picture on the right shows where we worked together to put together pieces of this puzzle. And then the Coast Guard came out and they actually had a session with us where we worked together to read a map. And we had this big map and all these tools and a compass and all this stuff. And they had us figure out coordinates where we were trying to figure out if somebody were in distress, how we could find them. And I learned a lot about myself during that activity. So I learned about like what happens as a student when you disengage from an activity and how do you feel about that? And what can you do to make sure when you have a disengaged student, you know, how you can pull them back in and all that. So one of the most transformative experiences though that I had was taking a walk along the pier. And so imagine if you're walking along these amazing planks of wood and sort of carved and inscribed into the woods into the wood is the name of teachers who have traveled this path before you and helped create this amazing space for educators and helped empower and inspire educators and will continue to inspire educators. So I want to try to sort of recreate a little bit of this for you tonight, because along this walk that we had, we really spent some time reflecting on why we're teachers and why we get up every day and do the things that we do. So I'm going to try to recreate a little bit of that for you tonight, but I want to give you just a little bit of background. During my week at NCAT, we spent some time reflecting on our why and what our passion is for teaching, what our story is. And I don't know about you, but I've been to professional developments before where I was asked to share my why. And I'm going to be honest, this whole concept of my why, it's caused me a lot of anxiety over the years, not because I didn't know what my purpose was and not because I didn't know why I wanted to be a teacher, but just I don't know that I thought that my why was maybe as important or as profound as others' whys. And I feel like maybe, I don't know, I thought maybe something was wrong with me, right? That I didn't have this sort of life-altering experience that led me to the teaching profession. And honestly, other times, and I know you guys have probably felt this as well, it was literally all I could do to get myself to the meeting in the first place. And so trying to articulate why, what my why was when I felt overworked and underappreciated and maybe overwhelmed, it felt really stressful. And sometimes it just didn't click with me. And in today's educational climate, there's going to be times when you may be feeling overwhelmed. And if you've been in education as long as I have, you'll see the how we do what we do changing with policy, changing with administrative changes, or just changing because we now know more than we did because we have new knowledge and technological advances. And so our how really changed a lot in 2020, right? When we went fully remote for so long. And this is why we need to reclaim our why, so we can adapt more effectively and with a sense of passion to the how. So there's a lot of things that are going to be outside of our control, but what we can control is the why. So I hope that what I share with you this evening is going to click for you. But honestly, if it takes a little time to marinate, that's okay too. And really, my why has changed a lot over the years. My why used to be, and I mean, it is to some extent still this, that I wanted to foster this lifelong love of reading. I grew up in Kansas in the middle of the United States. It was landlocked. And while my parents took me on these adventurous vacations when I was young, I still found my daily escape in the pages of this latest teenage romance novel. Yes, I was that kid. I always had a book in my hand, and I remember my parents would make me put my book away at the dinner table, much like we make our own kids turn off their cell phones, right, during dinner. So that was my why, to help my students find the love of literature that I had. But as I continued teaching, I learned that that wasn't enough, but I wasn't sure what to do about it. So when people ask me what my why was, I'm not going to lie, I inwardly cringed. And I said what had always been my why: to foster this lifelong love of literature, to help kids see themselves in the pages of the book they are reading, to live 1,000 lives by reading books, and to travel 1,000 different places through the adventures of the books that they read. And that's a great why. Like, that's a really noble why, but it just wasn't enough for me. And when I was at NCAT, Julie Pittman, who is the special advisor for teacher engagement at DPI, she was one of the presenters, and she's absolutely amazing. And she shared this TED Talk with us. And, she even said it herself, it's dated and it's kind of cringeworthy, right? But this message is clear, that if we will look at and lead with our why instead of our what, it really can change the trajectory of how we teach. So we're not going to take time to watch that this evening, but when you get a chance, just follow the link down there on the bottom of that slide and please watch it. It's about 17 minutes. And it was truly, this experience that she created for us was truly transformative. And I am not going to do it justice, but I'm going to try to condense this and kind of share with you some of the parts that made the most sense for me, in hopes of helping you reclaim your why this evening. So this TED Talk guy, Simon Sinek, he was talking about businesses and why we buy from the companies that we do. And he mentioned Apple, and he mentioned how people feel very comfortable buying products from Apple, right? But there's other computer companies with similar products and resources, but they don't always do as well as Apple. And so why is that? And so he kind of talked about this golden circle, which is the what, how, and why. And he mentioned a car advertisement, and he says, we have this great new car and it gets this great gas mileage and it has heated seats or whatever, you should buy it. But that doesn't really kind of do that for us, right? It kind of falls flat. There's no passion with that. But then, right, I thought about it and I thought, well, what about if, we see this commercial with a car with this new technology saving the life of a baby in the back seat with its crash detection software, right? That's the car dealer's why. That's the company's why. They want to save lives. That's the passion. So with Apple, they say, well, we want to revolutionize the world with our cutting edge technology. We sell computers. So see how if we lead with our why, when we remember our passion and our purpose, then we obviously can become more believable. And trust me, guys, kids see this. If they know the teachers who love what they do, the teachers who are passionate about their job. And sometimes it just takes us reclaiming our why to present that passion to our students. And if students see us as passionate about what we do, then they're going to feel that sense of purpose when they're adults and they go and follow their dreams with their career. And my mom always told me that I needed to find something that I love doing, right? Because I'm going to spend a lot of time doing whatever this is that I choose for my career. And if I could get paid for it, all the better. And that's how I feel about teaching. So the problem is, though, is that most people focus on the what and the how, right? Even in education. So people are going to ask us what we do, and we say, oh, I teach. And then you get the groans and the, oh, I could never do what you do comments, usually followed by, okay, well, you get the summers off. And I cringe with that, right? But I let them think what they want because we know the truth. So anyway, what if we did it like Apple does, right? Or like a good car advertisement does, or really any company that leads with passion, and we advertise our why. We lead with we lead with that, right? We lead with our why when people ask us what we do. So I was able to spend through this presentation some time at NCAT thinking about my students and how they see my class and how they see me as a human and how they feel about English. And I thought about my own educational experiences. And yes, somewhere along the way, I learned the material, but I don't remember how I learned the material, right? That was secondary. What I remember is how I felt. I remember the relationships I had with my teachers. I remember the relationships I have with my classmates. And it dawned on me, I kept hearing from students throughout my career that my class was a place for them to be themselves, where they didn't have to prove anything to anyone, where it felt safe for them. And so this helped shape my why. So I wanted to reframe this for people. So when someone asks us, what do you do? I would like us to consider reframing that and leading with our why. So here's my why now. When someone asks me what I do, instead of saying I teach, I say, I create a safe landing place for kids during the day, a magical place for them to explore their thoughts and beliefs. I teach, right? So I create a safe landing place for kids during the day, a magical place for them to explore their thoughts and beliefs. I teach. So I learned that I don't have to have this life-altering experience that caused me to want to teach. What I do every day in my classroom might be life-altering for someone else. So when we think about this idea of reclaiming our why, I want us to spend some time thinking about why it would be important for our students and for our colleagues for us to lead with this sense of passion and purpose. So this first part of this session, the reclaiming why, I'm going to kind of walk you through and guide you through some questions. It's going to help you consider your why. Now, I know we probably will all be coming from various and assorted stages in our career, right? And that's okay. But keep in mind that your why can change, and it likely will change as you grow in your profession. So if you're a more seasoned teacher like I am, your why likely has changed a lot, even if it hasn't ever changed, right? Then that might be your true north, right? But it's still good to remember and kind of work on, reclaiming and reevaluating our purpose. So I want you to take a couple of minutes for each one of these questions that I'm going to ask you to consider, and, find some soothing music, find some background, where you can have some time to write. If you're, listening to this somewhere else in the car, you've got voice memo on your phone, like maybe do that, like anywhere where you can gather your thoughts. And so here are the questions that I would like you to consider when you are thinking about reclaiming your why. So number one, why did you decide to become a teacher? Number two, what part of teaching brings you the most joy? Number three, describe the class or student that was the most positively memorable for you and why? Number four, how do you want your students to feel when they walk in your classroom and when they leave your classroom? And then number five, what are the barriers potentially keeping kids from feeling this way in your classroom? And as we launch this new school year, I thought it was very important to spend some time thinking about why we do what we do. So you can pause this video and take some time to think through those questions. And then you can resume when you have spent a little bit of time thinking through those questions. So what you see here is we're going to be solution-minded people. And so I want us to brainstorm how we can help remove these identified barriers, right? So this is one great tool for engagement, and it's collaborative, and it's a Padlet. right? So I've also used a QR code, and kids love QR codes, and you can easily make them. Sometimes the website or image will allow you to click right there on it, and you can click on generate QR code. And from there, you can use the QR code generator. So I also like another QR code, which will, if we go to the link, it's www.qr-code-generator.com. qr-code-generator.com. And that's one that I like. It's pretty easy to use. So you can use QR codes to share PDFs. You can send kids videos, and you can reteach something that we learned in class, or maybe you can use it as a bell ringer to start class. You can use it in your announcements if you're working with those with NCVirtual or another online place, or even just through your Canvas at your face-to-face school. So they're really easily adaptable to a face-to-face school or a digital class. I've had a picture of Shakespeare in my classroom before. I've had the kids scan a QR code, and it automatically takes them to the Globe Theater. So think about how you could use QR codes, of course, keeping in mind safety and age of your students and what you're comfortable with for them. But I find that that's a way to get information to the students in a way that they are familiar with, in a way that they can appreciate. So I want us to look at some of these collaborative tools, right? And I've put some of my go-tos on here, some that I've used more than others, but we're going to talk about them for a little bit. So for the online games, right? These are games that kids really like. We've got Kahoot, right? The kids absolutely love seeing themselves on that leaderboard. We've got Look It. I really haven't used that one too much yet, but my colleagues that I work with in my face-to-face school, they absolutely love it. There is a place for them to play homework games with words that you choose, like for vocabulary, or they've already got pre-made topics on there that you can choose from, just like Kahoot does. What the kids like about it is the kids can take points from one another, so it's a little more interactive, and they really do seem to prefer the Look It to over Kahoot. Quizlet. You've got games that you can play, quizzes that you can do for vocabulary practice. Room Recess. This one is one of my favorites. Depending on the age of student that you teach, and I teach high school and I teach upper level high school. I have OCS students in my blended program for NCVirtual. So the games are fun, they're interactive, they can be on a lower level, which would be important for some of my students who need that lower level and a place for them to feel successful. And even in my, an AP Lit class that I teach, in my face-to-face class, even if I'm putting something there that would be in a 4th or 5th grade reading level, let's say, it's okay, because the kids are still up and they're having fun and they're playing the game, and it's still great topic. So my all-time favorite one is Cannonball Cats, right? And it's geared for elementary school age kids, but I promise you, all of my high schoolers love it, no matter what their reading level is. So I can put it on the Clear Touch, and they can take turns launching the cannon, which they think is amazing. And there's a lot of great engagement for this figurative language review. And sometimes the figurative language, it has a lot of conversation, because depending on the level of your kid, you could talk about, well, why is it this and not that, right? Why is this a simile instead of something that we could show as personification, if it feels like it could fit into more than one category? So then you go into the collaborative tools, right? And I know that you've probably used Google Slides and Google Docs, but one of the activities that I love with Google Slides, well, number one, the kids can work together even at home on it, which I think is extremely empowering, especially for some of our students who are non-traditional students and might need to work during, whenever, and they need a little bit more time to work together, but outside of the typical school day. So one of my introductory activities, I have the shared presentation. So I'll put the link out via Canvas, and each student in this creates one slide with whatever my set criteria is, right? So I teach English, so I always have them share their favorite quote and why. And they need to have images that can be symbolic to them. And what I find is that kids will start talking to one another about what they have on their slides, and that's when these connections are formed. So just yesterday, I had one student share the most amazing artwork she had ever created, and I was able to ooh and ah all about this girl and her artwork. And And you have to keep in mind that this girl was somebody who hadn't really yet smiled in my class, and she really hadn't talked to anybody too much. And when the kids heard me talking to her about her art, they automatically went to her slide that it was all shared. And they too started praising her and oohing and eyeing over it. And suddenly the girl who was very quiet and sat in the back of the room and wasn't talking to anyone, she now was beaming ear to ear. And I commissioned her to create this piece of artwork for my classroom, and she started talking with other class artists, and she was just loving the attention. And everyone can see everybody else's slide, right? So I always share mine and present mine to the class, but they build connections with each other. And it's I find that to be a really great activity. Goose chase, oh my gosh, absolutely love, one of my favorites. So I use this a lot during COVID, but I found it to be really fun for introducing a unit or just helping students make friends. And it's really important that we as educators have some time for students and work that into our curriculum, give them some tools to help them make friends with one another, because they're struggling with that. And they're kind of, at least I find the students that I'm working with do have a little bit of trouble kind of trying to figure out what to talk about. So you're giving them something to talk about, you're giving them an action and activity. And so it's a low stakes competition, right? But it's building connections and it's building confidence. Flipgrid has been switched to just flip, right? But I love seeing the videos that the kids make. And it's a really great way to gauge understanding for students who maybe aren't comfortable writing. So for that, I find it to be a really perfect tool. And they can hide their face if they wish, but even the act of doing that gives me a lot of information about them and how they view themselves and their own self-confidence. So I can learn a lot about the students, even that goes beyond their curriculum. So I really do enjoy using that tool. And one of my all-time favorite tools for feedback is Screencast-O-Matic. So I'll pop an essay that a kid wrote, or if I'm working with my blended student, the activity that they were working on, and I'll have that on my computer and I'll screencast it, and then I offer verbal feedback to them. So it goes much faster than writing on the paper, and I know that they're listening to it and enjoying what that feedback is much more than if they needed to read that, especially for some of our students who maybe struggle a little bit with reading, so they can hear what you're saying, and that helps. So it takes less class time than an actual conference would. And it does require some time outside the class, to complete, but it's well worth it, I promise you. So they can also screencast a video to you sharing their understanding of a concept, and they can send it to you as an MP4. And so that's super easy. Brain breaks. Oh my gosh, y'all, if you've not used brain breaks, I really encourage you to use these. These are so important for kids, and it teaches them to take a break, and that's important for their mental health inside and outside of the classroom. And so I've listed just a few here that worked well. You can do a Google search of like 10,000 brain breaks and find them for your age group and your subject that you teach and all that. But these are just kind of some general ones. The rock, paper, scissors competition. This one would be great to use to determine maybe who speaks in a presentation, or maybe you want to do it just for bragging rights. For the would you rather this or that, put a picture up of something. So my go-to is, would you rather pizza with or without pineapple, right? And I promise you, this doesn't seem like this would be this huge topic, but it actually is. This really gets the kids talking and supporting their answers, right? They're building connections with one another. Oh, your team pineapple seems silly, but the connections they make with this are very non-threatening and fun. And maybe if the person that they can agree with that are on team pineapple, then maybe they can also agree on something else, right? And so it's quick, it's easy, it's fun, it gets very passionate. So those are fun to do. You can do that with your online class as well. Have them write to you, have them do a discussion board and talk about it, all of that, building connections. Brain teasers, we all know about those. Those are fun. Those are quick and easy. The kids have a really good time trying to figure that out and it's flexing their brain. The plates activity. So what this one is, if you don't have plates, you can use folders. So the students will put an empty plate, or obviously an empty plate or a folder on their head if you don't have them. And they just walk around with this folder or this plate on their head, right? But if they drop it, they have to freeze until somebody else comes to pick up their folder or their plate for them. But the one picking up the plate or the folder for them can't drop theirs in the process. And so you can do multiple rounds of this. You can do it to music, you know, whatever, just to kind of lighten the mood. For your online students, you could do this and have them, encourage them to get their family involved. It would be a great way to build some relationships with in their family structure as well. Dance party, so much fun. I sent you a link to one of my all-time favorites. I did this in my face-to-face school on the last day of school with my classes, and apparently word got out, and before I knew it, I had kids from all over the building coming into my room for this dance party, right? And so what it was is it was the Wii game where it shows you the movements for the dance, but it's on YouTube. And so the kids you can put that on there and the kids just follow along with those movements, even though they're not actually playing the video game. So they were moving, it was all very school appropriate. They were laughing, they were connecting. And so I thought, why not do this for a brain break, right? So like, we've been working really hard, let's dance. And you can have a list of songs that the students generate and maybe do this once a week or once every couple weeks, depending on the culture of class. Really, that will probably help drive how often you want to do something like this. For our online classes, we can encourage them to do this. I know in my blended classes, I would encourage my co-teachers to do this within their face-to-face class. But in a traditional setting class, maybe even invite the kids to do this all together. You know, you screencast that out to the kids, or the kids can talk to you about when they did this with their family or whatever, right? So there's ways to get that brain break built in, no matter what structure your course is. Small brain breaks like this, they're really critical to building relationships with students and just creating this safe environment. So if students are feeling low on energy, or they're feeling bored, or they're feeling frustrated, or they're having a bad day, it's likely that they're not going to be as attentive or as engaged in your classroom activity. So let's mix it up a little bit, right? Let's stop, let's take a brain break, let's regroup, let's have fun, let's laugh, let's make connections, let's talk to one another and be together as humans in the room, building those connections. It's going to let them help you. It's going to help them feel your energy. And all of that goes back to our why, because if we're grounded in our why, right, I create a safe landing place for kids during the day, this magical place where kids can feel comfortable and confident sharing their ideas and opinions, then when I'm leading with that, then it makes these activities even more meaningful, because the students know that they're real and they're authentic, and they're much more, I find them to be much more engaged in my class when I do use these collaboration tools. Okay, so I just want to say, let's try to keep focused right on our why. When we lead with our passion, when we know what kind of environment we want to create for our students, when we're creating an atmosphere, an experience, sort of this family, right? More than any content that we can offer, kids need to build connections with one another. Now, we have the how, and we obviously need to teach our content, because that's extremely important. We owe it to our students to do the how, and we owe it to our students to do that how really well. And we already know what the what is, but the why is going to make that how even more engaging, even more positive, and even more collaborative. So I just wanted to say thanks for coming tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm completely open to having conversations with you, or brainstorming with you, or whatever it is that I can do to help out. So please contact me at angela.haynes@ncpublicschools.com. And I hope you have a fantastic evening.